take another second to do any sound checks and or white field, whatever you guys do. Yeah. Okay, all good on that. All right, so I think we're just about set. Okay. Jamie, you ready? We're going? All right. Well, again, thank you everybody for being here for this update today. And my name is Aaron Bolin, and I'm a police officer with the City of Scottsdale. The spelling of the name is A-A-R-O-N-B-O-L-I-N. Rank is police officer, but I am one of our public information officers for the department. And we wanted to make sure we gave an opportunity for our community to just know a little bit more about this arrest that was made over the weekend regarding the shooting that happened off of Alma School in Happy Valley on Saturday. And so what we're looking to address today is hopefully just give it all kind of one clear, concise, hopefully timeline as well. Be able to answer a few questions that we can answer at this point in time. A couple things to know and remember right now. One, we will not be publicly identifying the homeowners where this incident occurred at this time. We will also not be identifying publicly the victim that was shot at this time. So those questions will not be answered at this time. It's important to know that even though an arrest was made, and that we hopefully that will give some peace to the neighborhood and some peace to our community, that our detectives' work is not quite done yet. So there's still more to be done. It's still an ongoing investigation with regards to processing some of the evidence and still finishing up building that case. And so again, that might be why some of the questions you ask, we may not be able to answer at this point in time. But let's go back to Saturday and sort of begin there. On Saturday, in a neighborhood northeast of Happy Valley Road and Alma School, a 911 call came in at about 12:13 p.m. It was from a homeowner who heard gunshots outside their residence, went down to their front door, and found someone that was there for an appointment with them, basically at their front landing, who was suffering from what appeared to be multiple gunshot wounds and was actively bleeding. So again, that call came at about 12:13 p.m. to our dispatch. After that call, we didn't really receive a flood of other calls coming in on 911, and so as officers responded and got there at approximately 12:21 p.m., we knew we were dealing with an emergency situation and someone who was critically injured. But as a little bit of delay of response also allowed to know that this was not an ongoing act of violence at that point in time. So that was already sort of leading our officers to believe that this was an isolated incident at that residence. When officers arrived, they immediately began to help render aid to the victim, to help stabilize what they could, to immediately make the scene safe, to then allow Scottsdale fire crews to come in, get that victim to a higher level of care as quickly as possible. The victim was transported to a local trauma center here in Scottsdale, and meanwhile, our officers continued to work that neighborhood searching for that suspect. We had a couple different descriptions go out, and so we had to be very careful about information we could confirm as far as a suspect would go to then let the community know. But we also did put out a Twitter on our Twitter account, as well as a reverse 911 call to that area. And that reverse 911 call goes to landlines unless you register specifically for your cell phone, and we can give information on that later. That area of that reverse 911 was basically from Dynamite Road all the way down to just south of Alma School, and then it was from 128th Street to just west of Alma School. And so what the notification there was is that there was a police incident in the area, and that if people could just stay inside for the time being. And part of that isn't necessarily because we always think that the suspect or suspects could be on the loose looking for someone else to harm. It's also less distractions for the officers as they're responding to try to find a suspect, that they don't just have people coming out of their homes looking, constantly looking. It just adds to more distractions. So that's part of it. Again, we believed pretty early on that this was an isolated incident, and as the investigation went on and as we were trying to release more information, that became more apparent. As the officers worked to clear the neighborhood and the surrounding areas, they were not able to find the suspect right away. but that neighborhood was secured. And again, had there been ongoing acts of violence going on, then our officers were in place. We had several officers respond to that neighborhood, and they would have been prepared to start handling anything else that was ongoing potentially. Once we knew sort of the status of the victim, that they did have life-threatening injuries that were critical, our detectives were called out. Our violent crimes detectives usually will take lead as far as the investigators on a case like this, but we have an amazing team of investigators here at Scottsdale Police, and even if a case comes out where it's one particular discipline's specialty or lead, a lot of the other detective bureaus will actually assist with surveillance or follow-up or interviews and things of that nature. And so a really good team responded of officers and detectives from different disciplines to help the violent crimes unit to get information out on this as quickly as possible. Speaking with the homeowners where this shooting occurred, and I'm going to go back real quick. The victim showed up for an appointment with the homeowners. Basically, when they drove into that driveway and parked was when the suspect emerged from like a waiting place where they were hiding, and basically then shot that victim while they were seated still in the vehicle. So the victim, based on the surveillance footage we've been able to review, the victim never even had a chance to even get out of the vehicle before they were being shot or anything like that. So I just want to go back and make sure I address that. Going forward then with the interviews with the homeowners, we come to find out that through their business dealings, they deal with mortgages and some foreclosures and things of that nature, that they have had instances where they've had threats against them. They've had people who are unhappy with the situations that they find themselves in with these business dealings. And so we were able to get a short list of some people that had their residences foreclosed on within about the last 6 months or so. And from that short list, we were then able to start looking at, from the person's names and identifications, physical descriptions of those people. One name then sort of surfaced as matching the basic description we had on our suspect, which was a white male, approximately 6 feet tall and approximately 200 pounds. That investigative lead was identified as Patrick Gruchala, and then our detectives continued to work to find out what his current whereabouts would be. Our detectives found that he was living with family off of 8700 East Gale, which is a residence in Scottsdale as well. And once that was found out, we had surveillance teams immediately go to that residence and start watching that residence to see if Mr. Gruchala was living there. His vehicle was there, and during part of the surveillance, they did observe Mr. Gruchala leaving the residence. On February 19th, our detectives were in surveillance positions from early in the morning through later in the day, but about 9:30 or so in the morning, they saw Mr. Gruchala leave the residence carrying a tan plastic bag out into a desert wash area adjacent to that residence he was staying at. He then returned some time later, not carrying that same bag. So our detective units went and searched that desert area to see if they could find possibly what was discarded out there. They were not successful the first time, but they actually then brought in one of our canine dogs that is trained to smell out explosives and gunpowders and things of that nature to then help the search. And right just before 1 p.m., they were able to find that plastic bag underneath some rocks, sort of in a shallow hole. And inside that plastic bag, there was a handgun that was found that then also matched the caliber of the weapon that was used to shoot the victim at the homeowner's residence off of 104th Way. From there, based on the physical description of Mr. Gruchala, based on the weapon initially matching at least the caliber of the weapon that was used to commit the crime, and then some other investigative information that our detectives learned that I won't share here yet, they were able to go and get a search warrant from a judge to search the residence Mr. Gruchala was staying at. Members of our special assignment unit, which makes up our full-time SWAT team, then served that search warrant approximately 7:30 p.m. that evening. And during the course of that search warrant, other residents of that Gale address came out. Mr. Gruchala stayed inside for just a little while. There were some diversionary devices that were used to then help coax him out, but once he was outside the residence, he was taken into custody without further incident. Once he was in custody, the rest of the search warrant was served on the residence, and then further evidence of clothing items and a handwritten note with the address of the homeowners off 104th Way and some other things tying Mr. Gruchala to this shooting of this innocent person were found inside that residence. Mr. Gruchala is currently still in custody. He was booked into the Maricopa County Jail sometime yesterday morning, I believe it was right around 11 a.m. when we sent out the news release that we sent out. And he's currently being held on a $500,000 cash-only bond. The victim is still, unfortunately, in critical condition, still in the ICU. And while we have a connection between Mr. Gruchala and the homeowners, Mr. Gruchala's residence was foreclosed on by the homeowner's business that they run. There is no other connection between our victim and Mr. Gruchala. The victim was simply there for basically a medical tech appointment with the homeowners, and there's no connection between him and Mr. Gruchala other than he literally pulled into the driveway when Mr. Gruchala was there to inflict harm on what we believe was intended to be the homeowner or one of the homeowners. And so it's an incredibly sad situation for that victim and for the victim's family. And we're still wishing all the best in their recovery. But we are so grateful to announce that Mr. Gruchala has been arrested. And just a little over 30 hours from the time of the incident, our detectives teaming together, working as diligently as they could, and trying to make our community even that much safer to make sure that someone like Mr. Gruchala isn't out there to victimize anybody else. It appears he had a target probably in mind, but again, he was mistaken on his victim in this case. And so I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Scottsdale Fire, obviously, for their role in this, to make sure they could get there as quickly as possible to help get that victim to a higher level of care. Again, our patrol officers responded, acted exemplary in this situation, as well as our detective units that responded. And again, we talk about that teamwork. It's not just a violent crimes unit case. Everyone comes together to help out on cases like this because that helps us resolve these so much faster than just one group working on it. So we're just really, really grateful for their work, for their tireless efforts to make sure that this person was arrested as quickly as possible, and again, to help restore some of that peace, hopefully, to our community. I think that's everything statement-wise and timeline-wise. Again, there's a lot and kind of some back and forth, so if we have some questions about timeline, I want to make sure we clear any of that up, as well as any other questions we might have.
Thing you can say about the motive as opposed to the victim being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and anything that you've learned from the suspect about once not knowing who was targeted?
Right, so as far as what the suspect was willing to talk about with our detectives after the arrest was made, it was to admit that he was on a bicycle ride into the McDowell Mountains that afternoon, and that was about as far as he was willing to speak on. And so our detectives are really looking more toward what's going on in the background of this incident, which is the foreclosure of the suspect's home by the business that the homeowners were running at the time. And then again, our victim just happened to literally pull into the driveway for a completely separate thing. That victim is not related into the homeowner's business at all. That victim was simply there to do a medical tech appointment with one of the homeowners.
You said you received a short list of some names of people. Was
Right.
that from the homeowner?
Correct. Yeah, the homeowner was able to provide that short list based on some people that they knew they had foreclosures on through their business, but then also pointing then our detectives toward people who not only were foreclosed on, but people who were then extremely upset about it or had issued maybe a veiled threat of some type or something along those lines. So that was able and very helpful and able to then help our detectives to narrow down our possibility. And again, that allowed us pretty early on, within those first hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, to know that this was truly an isolated incident, that we didn't believe there was any further threat to our community at large, other than this person potentially was very dangerous, but not going out and just committing acts of violence randomly. This was a somewhat targeted, isolated incident. They just unfortunately shot the wrong person.
And you also said that this investigation is far from over. What is next for detectives in this case?
So I know what's going to happen probably in the next 24 hours is we're going to take that gun and we're going to test it. We're going to test it with like DNA. We're also going to do try to do a match on the rounds that were fired and the casings that were fired out of the gun. And so that will then help tie in to help confirm whether that was truly the weapon used, or was it a weapon that was just the similar caliber that was used. And so obviously when this thing goes to court and you have to prove a case beyond a shadow of a doubt, those types of things need to be confirmed before that can happen. So, but right now, yeah, we're in those early stages of that. And so I believe all the search warrants have been served, all the other evidence has been collected. The clothing that was found in Mr. Gruchala's home did match what was seen on their surveillance video as well. And so again, all of that will go into the documentation part of the report to sort of keep building this case and the evidence that Mr. Gruchala is the suspect in the shooting.
Have you worked with this family/business owner before with threats against him?
I'm not immediately aware of any reports or anything that we've had from them being threatened before. Sometimes, again, a threat can be a veiled threat, and a threat could be almost too general that sometimes the law, it doesn't fit into the description of the law that it would actually break the law. So something could be like, I'm going to get you, would not necessarily always be something that would be maybe reportable or prosecutable. It could be documented, and that could be something that we could kind of keep track of. Usually threats that are more immediate, where maybe we're in the same proximity as each other, and I say, I'm going to come over there and actually punch you in the face. That's a more articulable threat typically that then through enforcement we could probably do something on. But some of the threats that they described were a little bit more veiled or just vague and just not specific enough. But as far as immediate knowledge of any reports, I don't know that right now.
Can you go, you mentioned this reverse 911 thing, just for
Right.
reference for the public, that in a situation like, what can a person do that has only a cell phone? How do they, get on that list?
Yes, so there is, and I can provide the actual website to everyone that's here in just a moment. We can put it up on our Instagram as well. But it is a website through maricopacounty.gov, I believe. It's part of their Community Emergency Notification System, CENS, SENS. And so reverse 911 is kind of the sort of the generic name we give it because it makes more sense for, I think, most people than saying Community Emergency Notification System. But yes, there is a way to register your cell phone, because I know many people are going away from landlines in general, and so there is a way to go on to a website to register that. You can get to it on our City of Scottsdale website. If you go through the City of Scottsdale website to the police department part, and then I believe you search reverse 911 or Community Emergency Notification System, then you can get directed to it that way. There's a link to that Maricopa County website for it. But it's a helpful tool. Yeah, definitely. Does anybody have any other questions?
The surveillance video, was that like a Ring doorbell at a home, or?
It was a home surveillance system. I'm not sure the make or the model of it, but from what I was able to read in some of the reports and review on the Form 4, it appears that it was pretty high quality. So that, again, is helpful for detectives to then follow up. And surveillance cameras are a great tool. And they can sometimes be a preventative tool, but sometimes they don't help with prevention, but they help solving things on the back end. And that can be almost just as important to hopefully getting justice for victims as well. Anybody else? Jamie, do we have any questions from the live? Okay. I think that's it. Okay. Again, thank you all for being here. I know people want. Yes.
Did you guys discover a bicycle?
Yes, a bicycle was part of the evidence that was found inside the home during the search warrant. Good question. again, thank you all, and I know you wanted some more information probably yesterday. It was a little tricky for us to be able to do this yesterday, but we thank you all for your patience. And again, we're just so glad that the suspect has been caught, and obviously we wish the best for the victim and his recovery. So, thank you.
Good stuff. Cool beans. That done there is a wrap.
Thank you, everybody.
Wow.
I didn't even look at my notes once.